Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of stone walls, flickering torches, and shadowy secrets, the kind you didn't dare whisper out loud. Picture yourself walking along a muddy street in a medieval town, the air thick with smoke from hearth fires and the sharp stench of livestock and unwashed humanity. A bell tolls in the distance, echoing through damp alleyways where whispers carry farther than you'd like. You pass a group of men huddled near the church door, casting sideways glances at a young man with too fine hair and hands that move with a little too much grace. You can feel it already, can't you? The tension, the danger. Because in this world, if you so much as look at someone the wrong way or love someone the wrong way, you probably won't survive the week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time down below. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 13 when you start noticing it. The way your stomach flips, not at the sight of fair-haired girls walking past with baskets of apples, but when your older cousin stretches his arms after chopping wood muscles, taut beneath the sweat-damp linen. You don't have a word for it yet. No one's told you what it means, but you feel it deep in your chest, like a secret you're terrified to learn. In the year 1326, in a village nestled between the abbey fields and the woods, your days are structured narrow and closely watched. You tend goats, you fetch water, you kneel during Mass. Your life is ordinary in every public way, and that's exactly how it has to be. Because behind the sermons and statutes, there's a terror that creeps through the back of your mind every night when you close your eyes. You've heard the stories. Whispers about men dragged from their beds in the night, their screams muffled behind holy hymns. One boy from the next town over, he never came back. They say the bishop's court condemned him for unnatural acts. Your father spat on the ground when his name came up, like just speaking of him would sour his soul. You can't let them know, not your family, not the priest, not your friends. You train your face into a neutral mask, bury your eyes in the dirt when the boys wrestle near the stream. You learn how to fake admiration for the pretty daughter of the tanner laugh when others tease you about her blush on command. It's not just performance, it's survival. At night, though, when the house sleeps and your father's snoring fills the silence, you let yourself imagine. Just a little. You picture what it might be like to hold another boy's hand, to share warmth under a blanket in winter, to speak honestly with someone really honestly, without fear. And then you push the thoughts down so hard your stomach aches, because you know what they'd do if they found out. The church calls it sodomy. That's the term that appears in sermons and proclamations in the ash-scented scrolls read aloud during feast days. Sodomy isn't just sin, it's rebellion, disease, blasphemy. It's an abomination that can bring down God's wrath not just on you, but on your entire village. That's what they teach. And the punishment, it varies. Whipping, imprisonment, exile if you're lucky. But more often there's fire. The law's vague on purpose. It gives men in power the flexibility to condemn whoever they choose, however they choose. And if you're poor like you, without connections, without protection, your fate depends on the mood of whoever's judging you that day. The bishop, the town reeve, the feudal lord. Sometimes they need to make an example. Sometimes the crowd wants blood. Sometimes a false accusation is all it takes. Your body begins betraying you in ways you can't hide. Your voice stays soft when the other boys deepen. You don't grow the square shoulders or the brash confidence they do. Worse, you start drawing, sketching faces you've memorized from stolen glances, hiding them beneath the hay in the barn. One day your brother finds one and laughs, calls you a tavern wife. You wrestle it back from him, heart racing. He doesn't understand, not yet. But he could. The tension builds slowly, like a pot left over the fire too long. You sense your father watching you more. The priest begins asking strange questions during confession. Have you kept yourself pure? Have you thought impure thoughts? You lie, of course. You always lie. But you know they're circling. Then one night it happens. There's a boy, Tomas. He's kind, gentle, with lashes that make you forget to breathe. He touches your shoulder once, just once, to thank you for helping his mother carry wood. And for a single night you lose control. You sneak away after curfew, meet him near the chapel ruins. It's innocent. Just words, a soft laugh, your fingers brushing for a heartbeat too long. But someone sees. Or thinks they see. Or just wants to see. The next morning, the village is buzzing. Eyes follow you more closely. You catch a whisper, your name followed by unnatural. By noon, your mother won't meet your gaze. The knock comes before supper. It's the constable and two churchmen. They don't need proof. They don't ask questions. They say your name, announce the charge, and bind your hands. Your father doesn't protest. He doesn't look surprised. Your brother smirks. Your mother weeps in silence. You're led past neighbors who avert their eyes, past the chapel where you once took your first communion, past the market stalls where Tomas is nowhere to be seen. You try not to cry, because crying would make it worse. They keep you in a cell below the bishop's hall, damp stone walls, a straw pallet, and one candle that gutters with every breath. You're not allowed to speak. Food is a crust of bread water, thick with grit. Time slows until it has no meaning. When the trial begins, it's barely that. A robed man reads the accusation. Another quotes Leviticus. You're not allowed to defend yourself. Someone says they saw you fondling. Another claims they heard gasping near the ruins. None of it's true, or all of it is, it doesn't matter. You're guilty the moment they brought you in. The bishop declares it, for the sin of sodomy the soul must be purged by fire. You collapse. Not from fear, though it's there wrapping itself around your spine like frost, but from the sheer raw grief of it. You won't grow old. You won't ever be loved. Your name will be erased, your body burned, your ashes scattered. And through it all, you still think of Tomas. You wonder if he's afraid, if he hates you now, or if he's hiding fingers still tingling from that one brief touch. The cell grows colder as night falls, though no one comes to bring you warmth. The stone beneath you drinks the heat from your body, and you start to shiver not just from the chill, but from the creeping weight of dread pressing down on your chest like a stone slab. You try to stay awake, try to keep your thoughts anchored, but the darkness makes everything swim. Faces blur. Tomas's voice rings in your ears, then fades. You hear your mother's sobs again, but they're swallowed by the thick silence. You pray. Not because you expect mercy, but because that's what you've been taught to do. You pray to the Virgin, to Saint Sebastian, who they say was beautiful, pierced with arrows, and yet survived for a time. You pray not for freedom, but for an end that won't hurt as much as they say it does. The stories, they describe the flames licking up your legs, the choking smoke, the crowd jeering or weeping, depending on the mood of the town that day. You pray to be unconscious before the fire reaches your face. But morning comes and you're still here. They let you out only once to strip you. You stand naked before the guards, trembling, while they examine your body for the devil's mark. One of them lifts your hair with the tip of his dagger, sneers at your soft skin. Another spits near your feet and mutters abomination. You've never felt more humiliated, more exposed. Your shame isn't just in your body, it's in your very breath, your heartbeat, your being. Afterward, they clothe you in rough sackcloth tied at the waist with a fraying rope. You're paraded through the courtyard while townsfolk gather. Some come out of curiosity, some from obligation. A few come with stones already in hand. One child points at you and asks, "Is that the sinner?" His mother pulls him back as if your presence alone might taint him. There's a platform being built near the edge of the market square. Wooden stakes, bundles of dry kindling. A barrel of pitch sits nearby, catching the morning light. You glance at it, and something inside you turns to ice. But the execution won't be today. No. First, they must cleanse your soul. They take you to the chapel. Not the beautiful one with stained glass and bells, but a small, dim, private room where only the bishop and his assistants sit. There's incense in the air, but it can't mask the rot of damp wood and sweat. You're made to kneel. They begin the rite of penance, not for your salvation, but for their own conscience. They need to believe your soul will be purified before they incinerate your body. The bishop speaks Latin over you, laying hands on your head, pressing down hard. You don't understand the words, but you know the tone. It's not kindness. It's condemnation laced in ritual. He asks you to confess. You say nothing. He asks again, louder. You hesitate, then whisper, "I loved." There's a pause. Then with a voice sharper than any blade he hisses, "That is not love. That is filth. That is the devil's lie." You're left in the chapel, still kneeling long after the men leave. You want to scream, to weep, to disappear into the floor. But mostly you feel tired, bone-deep tired. Your knees ache, your neck throbs, and your soul, if you still have one, feels like it's been hollowed out. That night you dream. You're walking through a meadow. The sun is warm and Tomas is beside you. He's smiling. You're not afraid. You're not hiding. You lie beneath a tree, side by side, your fingers intertwined. You almost believe it's real. Then the dream turns. The grass blackens. The sun fades. Tomas vanishes. And you're back on the stake, the fire reaching your knees, the skin peeling from your arms as the crowd chants psalms. You wake screaming. The guard laughs. "You'll scream louder tomorrow, sinner," he says. You don't reply. You won't give him that satisfaction. The next morning you're taken again, not to the square, but to a house. A nobleman's house by the looks of it. Polished wood beams, stone archways, tapestries on the walls. You're pushed into a room and left alone. Then he enters. The man is tall, cloaked in fur despite the summer heat. His eyes are cold, calculating. He introduces himself as Lord Everard. You've heard of him. He's the one who oversees judicial matters in the region when the bishop's busy. He doesn't smile. "You understand why you're here," he says. You nod. He walks around you slowly like you're an object on display. There is an alternative, he says. You lift your head. He explains. If you name others, if you give them names, details, places, your sentence could be lessened. Whipping instead of fire. A year in the Abbey penance house. Maybe even exile if you're especially cooperative. You want to laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's cruel. You have no names. There are no others, not ones you know. And even if there were, would you do that? Would you hand someone else over to this nightmare just to spare yourself? You stay silent. Lord Everard sighs. A pity, he says. Your stubbornness is admirable, but misplaced. He dismisses you with a wave and the guards drag you back. The next day they bring a confessor, a gentle-faced monk younger than the rest. He speaks softly, offers you bread, sits beside you. He doesn't condemn, not openly. He just says, "It would be easier if you just confessed." You stare at him. Easier for whom you ask. He doesn't answer. You feel sorry for him in a strange way. He thinks he's helping. He thinks this is mercy. That evening they let you see the pyre. They take you to the square under the guise of preparation. You stand there as they hammer the last stakes into the frame. You see the thick ropes that will bind you, the pitch, the branding iron that will mark your chest before the flames are lit, an old tradition symbolic of your sin. You don't cry, you don't scream, but you do look up at the sky, and for a moment it's so blue, so endless that your breath catches. You realize you've never really looked at it before. On the way back, you pass Tomas. He's with a group of boys hauling sacks of grain. He doesn't look at you, doesn't flinch. But you see it the way his hand trembles around the rope, the way his face drains of color. He knows. Maybe he always knew. And still he says nothing. You don't blame him. Not anymore. He's just trying to survive. Same as you. You spend what you think is your final night, curled against the stone wall, counting breaths. Each one shallow, deliberate, as if you could ration out your fear and make it run slower. But fear doesn't work that way. It builds in your chest a rising tide that refuses to ebb. You're not afraid of death itself. You're afraid of how it will feel, of the crowd, of your body giving way before your mind has finished saying goodbye. The cell door doesn't open that night, though you expect it to. You expect the sound of boots, the drag of chains, the hard shove toward dawn. But instead, silence. Even the guard who usually spits at you through the bars doesn't appear. It's like the world has paused just to make the waiting worse. When you finally do sleep, it's not really sleep, it's something like floating. You drift through old memories, summer fields, the way the wheat bowed in the wind, the time you scraped your knee and Tomas carried you laughing back to your door, the sound of his laugh, that soft, unguarded sound. It hurts to remember, but it also heals something just a little. Then morning comes, not the one you expected. The door creaks open, and it's not guards who enter. It's a woman. You squint in the dim light, trying to see her face. She's older, wrapped in thick linen with a cloak pulled low over her brow. Her voice is steady. "You have 1 hour," she says. "You don't understand." Then behind her, another figure steps in. A monk, but not the gentle one from before. This one's older eyes, sharp hands hidden in his sleeves. The woman leans down and whispers, "You have a friend who asked a favor." We cannot save your name, but we may still save your body. Your heart lurches. You don't dare to hope. It could be a trick, a cruel joke. But they move quickly, businesslike. The monk hands you a bundle, rough peasant clothes, the kind a farmhand might wear. He gestures for you to change, and though your hands shake, you do. The woman helps hide your hair under a cap, smears ash on your cheeks. She tells you not to speak no matter what. If someone asks your name, you're Tomas. That name stabs your chest like a blade, but you nod. They lead you out through a passage you never knew existed beneath the bishop's hall and into the ancient catacombs. The air smells of mold and centuries of damp prayer. Your footsteps echo. You pass broken statues, discarded bones, hollow-eyed saints carved in crumbling stone. Finally, a wooden hatch. The monk lifts it, and you squint into the morning sun as it floods the tunnel. You're behind the chapel now, beyond the edge of the village. No one sees you. Not yet. Go east, the woman says. Keep off the main road. Follow the stream. There's a cottage. Knock twice, then once more. You start to ask why, but she's already gone, vanishing back into the tunnel. You run. At first your legs feel useless, heavy as soaked logs. But the farther you go, the more they remember what it means to move freely. You don't stop to think. You don't look back. The trees blur past the stream at your side, trickling louder than you've ever heard. You lose track of time, but the sun climbs higher, warming your back, drying the sweat on your neck. The cottage is real. It sits nestled in a thicket of bramble, nearly invisible unless you know what to look for. You knock twice, then once more. The door opens. An old man stares at you. Silent, hard eyes. He says nothing, just steps aside and lets you in. The room smells of herbs and old leather. There are scrolls and dried flowers, a kettle simmering on a low fire. You collapse into the corner, unable to speak. He doesn't ask questions. He gives you water, then bread, then silence. It's the silence you're most grateful for. You stay there for 3 days. No one comes. You sleep more than you've ever slept. Sometimes when the old man thinks you're not looking, he watches you. Not with suspicion, but with something like pity. You wonder what he sees when he looks at you. A fugitive, a sinner. A boy too broken to speak. On the 4th day, he finally talks. You were marked, he says, not with fire, but with fear. You meet his eyes. He nods slow. I've seen others. Some survived. Some didn't. The ones who did kept running. Never stayed too long. Never told their true name. You want to ask if any of them were happy, but the words don't come. Instead, you whisper, "Why help me?" The old man shrugs. Because once someone helped me. It's all he says. It's all you need. He gives you a map, hand-drawn, points to a forest farther east, then a river town beyond that. You'll need a new name, he says. A trade. Learn to mend shoes or carve wood. Something useful. You nod. And when you leave the next morning, you're no longer walking like a condemned boy. You're walking like someone reborn. Still scared, yes, but alive. The river town is loud and bustling, fishmongers yelling, children darting between carts, travelers from faraway places. You keep your head down. You find a smith who needs an apprentice. He doesn't ask questions, just sees your hands, nods, and points to a pile of wood that needs splitting. You work, days blur. Your body grows stronger, your fingers callous. The heat of the forge begins to replace the memory of the fire you escaped. But at night, you still remember. Not the pain, not the cell, but Tomas. You remember his laugh, his silence, his hands brushing yours under moonlight. You wonder what became of him. Did he forget you? Was he punished too? Did he ever speak your name again? You'll never know. And that's the cruelest part of survival. You don't just leave a place behind. You leave people. You leave stories. You leave pieces of yourself scattered like ashes. One day a traveler mentions your old village in passing. Says there was a fire. Not the kind you feared. Just lightning, they say. The chapel burned. Some of the records lost. You feel nothing. Or maybe everything. Later, as you walk along the riverbank at dusk, you see two boys sitting together beneath a tree. One leans on the other's shoulder. No one watches. No one cares. You sit nearby just far enough to stay hidden. And for the first time in a long while, you smile. Because in that simple, unguarded moment, you glimpse a future. One you might not live in, but one you helped make possible. You stay in the river town for nearly 2 years. Long enough for your muscles to harden your voice, to deepen just enough your face to forget how it once flushed with fear. The forge becomes your new rhythm, early mornings, endless hammering, the scent of ash and sweat baked into your skin. The master smith calls you by your new name and you answer, like it's always been yours. You become someone else little by little. Not out of choice, but out of necessity. Still, the past doesn't let go so easily. Every time a stranger lingers too long at the edge of the market, you stiffen. Every time you hear boots echo in the street, your hands twitch, ready to run. And when the priest in town, an old affable man with a red nose and watery eyes, mentions sermons about the order of nature, your stomach knots even though he isn't looking at you when he says it. You never step into that church. Instead, you walk the river path on Sundays where the water murmurs in a tongue older than the priest's sermons. You find a quiet spot, let the breeze kiss your face, and imagine just briefly that this is your chapel now. That here in the rustling reeds and bending trees, God might listen without judgment. One morning, a young man named Emmerich arrives in town. He's from the north, slender and sharp-eyed, with a voice like honey and hands that never seem still. He works as a scribe, copying letters and contracts for merchants who can't read. You meet him when he brings a broken iron lamp bracket to the forge. He smiles as he hands it to you. You look like someone who's been through a fire or two. You flinch, but he doesn't press. He just tilts his head and adds, "I meant your hands." You work in silence, fixing the bracket, but his voice lingers like a melody you can't shake. Over the next few weeks, Emmerich keeps finding reasons to visit. A bent quill stand, a rusted latch, a mysterious rattle in the hinges of his satchel. Each time he stands close, not too close, but enough. And each time you feel something stir that you'd buried deep. One evening you find him by the riverbank, sketching with charcoal on a scrap of parchment. You don't mean to interrupt, but he turns and smiles like he expected you. You sit. A cautious silence settles between you. You don't talk much, he says. You shrug. Not much to say. He studies you. No, there's plenty. Just no one safe enough to say it to. Your heart pounds. He adds gently, I know what you are. You stand immediately, pulse roaring in your ears. But he doesn't back away. Doesn't scold or shout or cross himself. He just says, so am I. You stare at him. He meets your gaze unwavering. Sit, he says, or walk away. I won't follow. Your legs remain locked a moment longer, then slowly you sit again. The next hour is the first real conversation you've had in years. You don't tell him everything. Not about the cell or the pyre or Tomas, but you tell him enough. He shares his own tale, how he left a noble house after a rumor spread, how his mentor was flogged for defending him, how he's been wandering since. We don't last long in one place, he says. Not because we don't want to, but because the world won't let us. The moon rises before you part ways. When he stands, he hesitates, then gently brushes your hand. Not a kiss, not a promise, just contact. Human, simple, sacred. For the first time in memory, you don't recoil. You meet again the next night, and the one after. Sometimes you talk. Sometimes you just sit in silence. Once you hold hands for an entire hour, hidden in the tall grass, as fireflies blink around you like tiny stars. But you both know it can't last. Whispers begin. The forge master asks why you're spending so much time by the river. A merchant smirks when you pass with Emmerich. A child repeats a word they don't understand, a word that makes your blood run cold. You and Emmerich don't speak of it, but the distance between you grows. The smiles become quicker, the meetings shorter. One night, he doesn't show at all. You wait by the river until dawn. When you return to town, his room is empty. Gone. No note. No goodbye. You knew it would happen, but it still tears something inside you. The town grows colder after that. Not in weather, but in tone. People greet you less warmly. The forge master gives you fewer jobs. One morning you find the word sodomite carved into the side of your workbench. You don't sleep that night, or the one after. You pack quietly, taking only what you can carry. You leave a coin for the master, even though he doesn't deserve it. Then you slip out before dawn as the sky shifts from black to gray. Another town, another name. You walk for weeks, moving from village to village, always wary. You find odd jobs fixing tools, sharpening blades, patching roofs. Never stay longer than a month. Never trust a priest. Never let your voice get too soft or your glance linger too long. But you keep walking. And in your walking, you begin to meet others. A weaver with wide shoulders and a sad smile. A falconer who flirts without fear. A brewer who wears a woman's scarf when alone in the woods. They speak in code, in glances, in the space between words. You realize something. You are not alone. Not anymore. There's a quiet network flickering and fragile like candlelight in the wind. But it exists. People who help. Who hide others, who pass messages through herb pouches and embroidery patterns and ink marks in books. A shadow community rooted in survival. In time, they trust you enough to help. You begin guiding others, showing them the safe paths, the kind towns, the allies hidden in plain sight. You become part of the thread that binds the unseen world together. And through it all, you still remember Tomas. Not with pain, but with something like tenderness. He was your beginning, the spark, the first reason you ever had to run. And now, years later, as you crouch beneath a stable showing a frightened boy how to sneak past the watchman, you understand. You were never just escaping. You were building a way forward. Not just for yourself, but for all of them. The boy you guide that night is no older than you were when Tomas first smiled at you in the chapel ruins. Maybe 13, maybe 14. His tunic is too large, his shoes too worn, and his eyes, those deep, trembling eyes, are filled with the same mix of terror and defiance you once carried like a second skin. His name is Ulrich, though that may not be the name he keeps. You know how names work now, how they shed like old bark when the world tries to burn you down. You take him along the back route through the woods, avoiding roads, keeping him beneath the trees. You don't ask him to explain. You don't make him confess. You just show him where to step, how to breathe quietly, where the wild mint grows, so you can mask your scent when soldiers ride too close. He talks anyway. Most do once they sense you're not going to turn away. He whispers it, how the village priest caught him with the miller's son, how his own brother dragged him by the hair to the constable, how his mother refused to look at him. And then he asks the question you've heard 100 times by now. Is there a place where it's allowed you don't lie? You never do. No, you say. Not really. Not yet. His shoulders fall. But you add after a pause, there are places where it's less hunted, where people like us watch each other's backs, where you might breathe easier for a while. That small, fragile hope that's enough. That's what you give them. Not false promises, but fragments of a future that might be shaped with enough hands. The cottage you bring him to is the third one on your circuit, run by a gruff widow who minds her bees and has no patience for nonsense. She lost a son to the gallows. He was caught with another boy in the woods behind the monastery. She doesn't say much, but she keeps her door unlocked for you. Ulrich will stay there for a time. She'll give him tasks, teach him how to keep his head down. When it's safe, you'll return, and together you'll find the next step. You leave him with bread, a folded cloak, and a soft pat on the shoulder. He doesn't hug you. He's not ready, but his hand lingers at your sleeve a second too long, like he's afraid you'll vanish. You smile, then slip into the dark, just as you always do. You've become good at disappearing. Over time, you travel farther into the marshlands, across the lower ridges of the mountains, through cities with cobbled roads and high towers where the nobility scheme and rot. In one such place, you meet a tanner's apprentice named Ludo, who wears his tunic tied tight and walks with a sway that dares the world to challenge him. He teaches you the signals they use in the city, how to knot your belt if you're looking for others, how to fold a corner of your cloak if you need help. The city is different. Bigger, louder, but no less dangerous. Here they use silence like a weapon. Nobles with velvet gloves and secrets heavier than gold coins. Priests who preach piety by day and demand flesh by night. You see both sides, the ones who suffer and the ones who exploit. And in quiet corners, candle-lit back rooms, and market stalls at twilight, you begin to piece together a truth that reshapes your purpose. This isn't about sin. It never was. It's about power. Always has been. They don't punish love. They punish deviation. Anything that slips through the cracks of their tidy structure, man, woman, priest, sinner, lord, or peasant, is a threat to their control. And your love, your truth, that's the purest threat of all. because it says we exist without your permission. With Ludo's help, you gather names, hidden allies, tavern keepers who turn a blind eye, midwives who ferry messages between households, even a few monks, brave broken men who carry scrolls in their sleeves and risk their lives to shelter those the church would burn. One of them, Brother Niels, gives you a book. It's old, its cover cracked, its corners gnawed by time. But inside are poems, verses of men writing to men and women to women, not with shame but with longing, beauty, grace. They existed, he whispers, hands trembling. We existed. You spend hours with that book, reading by moonlight, letting the words heal places in you that you didn't even know were still wounded. The voices echo across centuries, proof that you're part of a lineage, a hidden, silenced choir that sang anyway. Later, when you've moved on, you'll leave the book with someone else, and they'll do the same. It becomes a kind of relic passed like a torch from one set of trembling hands to another. A symbol, a weapon, a prayer. By your third year on the road, your name has become legend in certain circles. The boy who survived the stake, the ghost of the fire. Some believe you were burned and rose again, that your scars glow red when danger's near. Others say you walk through walls and steal condemned lovers from their chains. You don't correct them. Sometimes myth is the only armor you've got. In truth, you still sleep with one eye open. You still flinch when someone says your name, whichever one you're using that week. You still wake from dreams of smoke and ropes and Tomas, though less often now. But you've built something, a trail, a pattern, a chance. And then one winter in a town near the coast, you meet her. Her name is Sabine. She's a healer apprenticed under a Jewish woman who taught her the old herbs, the old tongues, the old ways. She wears her hair braided with silver threads and has a laugh that could shatter glass. She finds you asleep under a bridge, shivering. You're terrible at hiding, she says, handing you a blanket. You mean to leave by morning. But somehow, you don't. You help in her shop. You learn which roots mend the gut and which berries cure fever. You sweep the floor. You listen when she talks about her sister who was stoned for kissing a girl in the orchard. You don't say much, but she doesn't seem to mind. One night over stew and candlelight, she says, "You remind me of a flame, not a bonfire, a lamp, small, but steady, enough to see by." You look away. You don't want to be seen. Not really. But maybe you think maybe it's okay. Just this once. And so you stay. Through winter, into spring. You've never stayed anywhere this long. You know you'll have to leave again, but not yet. For now there's warmth, there's safety, there's a soft glow in the dark, and hands that don't flinch when they touch yours. And in that small moment, you dare to believe maybe survival isn't the end of the story. Maybe, just maybe, it's the beginning. The spring air tastes different when you've survived a winter you never expected to outlast. Each morning when the frost thaws from the eaves of Sabine's cottage and the birdsong returns to the hedgerows, you wake with a cautious peace. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that promises forever, but a soft, wary quiet that wraps itself around your shoulders like a well-worn cloak. You've started calling this feeling something like belonging. Sabine never asks about your past, though she knows the shape of it. She knows by the way you flinch when you hear the distant ring of church bells, or how your hand hesitates over the latch at night. She knows by the way your eyes follow the road beyond the trees, always measuring the distance to flight. But she doesn't press. She simply includes you in everything. Preparing tonics, gathering herbs, washing bandages, even joining her in barter negotiations with the fishmongers, who always try to cheat her on Wednesdays. One evening, while sorting dried elderflower, she says, "You carry your fear like a satchel full of knives. You could set it down if you wanted. You don't answer right away. Because the truth is, you don't know how. Setting it down feels like asking to be hurt again. But that night, when you lie beside the hearth, on your little straw pallet, you think about her words. You imagine what it might be like to go an entire day without scanning every crowd for a threat, every whisper for your name. You imagine living like the villagers do, openly, carelessly, trusting the world not to burn them for who they are. You drift off imagining that kind of life, and for once you don't dream of fire. Word spreads quickly through small towns, even without messengers. And soon you start to hear it again, rumors. Whispers of men arrested in a village not far east, of a woman dragged from her home for tempting young girls into unnatural affection. No trials, no penance, just disappearance. Sabine hears it too. She stiffens when a rider in a black cloak appears at market buying salt without haggling. She narrows her eyes when the new priest visits homes without invitation, blessing doorways and asking strange questions about who lives where and with whom. And one morning a stone appears on her doorstep, smooth white, marked with red paint. You both know what it means. Someone has noticed. Maybe not you specifically, but something. Someone has spoken. Someone's watching. That night you prepare to leave. You've done it before. You know how to pack quickly, what to take, what to burn, what to bury. You leave behind your cot, the carved wooden comb Sabine gave you, even your boots, which might be too recognizable now. But when you reach the door, she stops you. "Not this time," she says. You turn, startled. "They always make us run," she says. "We leave and they win, every time. But not this time." You look at her, really look at her, and see the fire in her eyes. "But if we stay," you begin. "We stay smart," she says. "We don't make noise. We hide in plain sight. We become exactly what they expect until they stop looking. So you stay. But you change. You become shadows. By day, you tend the garden, help mend fences, and smile at the priest when he passes. By night, you meet travelers who come seeking shelter, using the back door, speaking in code. You build false compartments in the floorboards. You teach others how to vanish in 10 seconds flat. You keep packs ready by the back wall, candles with black wicks, for signaling pouches of dried wormwood, for masking human scent. And still life goes on. Children are born. Bread rises in ovens. Cows wander through broken fences. Life refuses to stop simply because fear lurks at the edges. One summer night, a young woman named Anselma arrives, bruised and barefoot, clutching a rolled scroll beneath her arm. Her voice shakes when she speaks. She'd been writing letters to a nun. They found them. She escaped through the abbey's latrines, hid in a grain cart, and walked 20 miles. You clean her wounds. Sabine braids her hair. You give her a name to use and a route to follow. And as she sleeps by the fire, you whisper to Sabine. "How many more, as many as need us," she replies. Over time, your little cottage becomes known, not publicly, not officially, but known in that hidden way the underground always knows its beacons. You are no longer just surviving. You are sheltering, protecting, rebuilding. But the danger never disappears. A letter arrives, anonymous, smudged with dirt. It lists names, yours among them. The ink is faded, but you recognize the handwriting. Tomas. You sit for a long time staring at it. He's alive. He remembers. And he's warning you. The letter says the bishop has commissioned inquisitors in your region, men with special authority, crueler than the average clerics, trained to find aberrations. Their approach is swift and quiet. No sermons, no warnings, just ropes and fire. You burn the letter, but not before copying the names. Some you know, some you've already helped, some you vow to reach. Over the next few weeks, you pass messages faster, coordinate escape routes farther, shift some of your people to distant contacts in mountain towns. You teach new signals, quicker methods of flight. Then you wait. And eventually they come. Not with drums, not with banners, but with silence and smoke. The first house burns before midnight. You see the flames from your window. Sabine nods. It's time. You don't run, not yet. You act. You light the black candle in the back window. You rattle the sheep bell tied beneath the table. You send the child apprentice with a note to the baker's wife who will pass it along the grapevine. By the time the inquisitors knock on your door, you're ready. Sabine opens it, calm, smiling. She shows them the tonic jars, the dried thyme, the row of labeled salves. They search the house. They find nothing. The floorboards are sealed. The packs are gone. The girl with the letters is already on a boat heading north. You watch from a hollow in the hillside, heart-pounding, teeth-clenched fingers curled around a stone just in case. They leave, for now. You wait 2 more nights just to be sure. Then you return. The cottage stands whole. Sabine meets your eyes, exhausted but unbroken. They'll be back, you say. She nods. Then we'll be ready. You sit beside her as dawn rises, and though you know the danger will never fully pass, there's something else now, something stronger than the fear. You're not alone anymore, and you're not just surviving. You're resisting. The resistance doesn't wear armor or carry swords. It doesn't march through streets or chant beneath banners. No, it hides in plain sight inside bread ovens, beneath haylofts, in the carefully coded words of a herbal recipe, or the particular way a shawl is folded at a market stall. And you, once the boy with trembling hands and a target on your back, have become one of its quiet generals. Each month the network stretches farther. You pass letters hidden in the folds of embroidery. You carve symbols into tree trunks along forgotten pilgrim trails. You mark maps with ashes, 3 dots for safe houses, a diagonal slash for danger. The whole system runs like a whispered song passed ear to ear, heart to heart. Not perfect, not indestructible, but alive. You spend time now training others, not just how to hide, but how to see. You teach young men and women how to read silence, how to feel when a glance carries warning. You explain the importance of moving like smoke, no trail, no scent, nothing solid enough to seize. You show them how to scatter salt in their footprints to mislead trackers, how to boil nettles for fever, how to signal with mirrored sunlight across long distances. One boy, Gerard, asks you, "Why do you still help when it's this dangerous?" You think for a long time. Then you say, "Because someone once looked at me and didn't run." That's what it comes down to in the end. Recognition. Solidarity in a world built on denial. Sabine keeps her clinic running. She pretends to be the town's busybody herbalist when really she's your anchor. She smuggles dried roots laced with messages to convents. She disguises fugitives as traveling patients. When the blacksmith's daughter disappears in the night, she tells the bishop she died of fever and no one questions her. By now, even the townspeople know better than to ask too much. They might suspect, some certainly do, but they also know Sabine cured their children's coughs, stitched their wounds, whispered prayers over their dead. She's earned their silence. You meanwhile make yourself less visible. You travel more often now, slipping between way stations and known allies. Sometimes you stay with shepherds who live too far out for gossip to reach. Other times you find refuge in abandoned barns, forgotten ruins, and once an old bell tower where pigeons have made their home in the rafters. There's a freedom to the road, but also a loneliness. Some nights under unfamiliar stars you miss the hearth. Miss Sabine's quiet laughter. Miss the predictable creak of the cottage beams and the scent of rosemary steeping in the kitchen. But then a knock comes at the door of a safe house, and it's a girl no older than Alric, her dress, torn eyes, bruised, carrying nothing but a name she was told to speak only once, your name. And suddenly it's worth it again. You guide her out of danger. You place her with a family 2 towns away. You teach her how to change her voice, how to slip a ribbon around her wrist that means safe, how to disappear if the constables ask too many questions. She doesn't thank you, not at first. She's too raw. But when you leave, she tugs your sleeve and says, "You saved me." And you think not just me. The system you're part of has grown. You begin to hear stories you didn't start. Of a merchant in the capital who shelters runaways in the empty crates beneath his spice shop. Of a trio of sisters who run an embroidery guild and stitch warnings into noblewomen's bodices. Of a silent boy who knows how to forge new birth records using soot and vinegar. It's bigger than you now. And that's the dream, isn't it? Not to be a hero, but to be unnecessary. Still, it doesn't mean you stop. You hear of an inquisitor, one not like the others, young, ambitious, with a mind like a blade and a hunger for glory. He's rumored to be compiling names, not just suspects, but those suspected of helping them. He has a list, they say, a long one. And though no one has seen it, you know deep down your name is on it. So you change tactics, more caution, more misdirection. You create decoy routes, fake leads, spread rumors of safe houses that don't exist to throw off any who might be listening. You use a new alias, Mathis. Fewer people know your real one now, and that's how it must be. Still, the Inquisitor draws closer. You feel it in the towns you pass through, doors that shut too quickly, friends who refuse to meet your eye. One man you'd trusted for years won't speak to you at all. He just places a sealed parchment in your hand, then turns and walks away. You open it by candlelight hours later. It's a list. Names. Each one marked with a red dot. The top name is yours. Below it, Sabine. And then a half dozen others you know, people you love. You burn the parchment, but the heat does nothing to settle your hands. This isn't just a hunt anymore. It's a purge. You send warnings. Ride overnight through storms to get word to allies. You fake your own capture in one town just to buy time for a group of runaways to get across the river before the bridge is closed. You lie, steal, bribe, and threaten. It costs you everything you have, coin sleep, even your voice hoarse from shouting over wind and rain. But they escape. All of them. And when you finally return to the cottage weeks later, Sabine greets you with a slap on the shoulder and a trembling smile. "You look awful," she says. You laugh. First time in days. Then you notice the boy behind her, a teenager with wide shoulders and soft eyes holding a broom awkwardly. Sabine catches your look. "He's new," she says. "I've been teaching him how to make cough syrup and how to lie convincingly." The boy grins, sheepish. You nod. Another seed planted, another light in the dark. And as you rest that night, truly rest wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by silence, not made of fear, you whisper the names of those you've lost. Thomas. Emmerich. The boy in the next village. The girl from the abbey. Each name is a vow, a promise. Not that you'll save everyone, but that you'll keep trying. Because even in a world where you could be burned alive by morning, you are still here. And that in itself is a kind of defiance. The seasons roll forward, whether you're ready or not. Spring fades into another hot, buzzing summer, the kind where bees move slower, and even the river seems to sleep beneath a film of heat. But you can't afford to rest. Not now. Not when the list keeps growing, and the inquisitor, his name is Barthélemy, has begun sending letters ahead of his visits, warning towns to expect him, to cleanse their streets. You read one of these letters by candlelight after a frightened bailiff slips it to you in secret. The language is precise, almost coldly poetic. Deviance among us, it says. Threats to the divine harmony of nature. The kind of rhetoric that always comes before someone vanishes. He's educated, this Barthélemy. Dangerous. He quotes scripture not like a priest, but like a lawyer. His words trap people and snare them with familiarity. He speaks of love while preparing the ropes. You know his type. They always speak in hymns when they build the firewood. You realize quickly you can't just run from this one. Barthélemy isn't like the others. He doesn't chase ghosts. He doesn't settle for rumors. He investigates. He dissects. And he leaves nothing behind. So you shift the game. You become what he expects to see. You dress plainer. You pray in public loud enough for bystanders to nod in approval. You hum hymns while sweeping the cottage stoop. You drop your eyes whenever you pass a cleric on the road. Sabine adjusts, too. Her herbs become blander. No more tonic for sleepless hearts or quiet courage. Just cough drafts and root poultices. The real work moves underground into dried bundles that look like nothing, into symbols scrawled beneath bowls, into the memory of every person who's passed through your door. You send word across the region. Avoid the coast. Barthélemy is circling, and still they come. More than ever. Boys whipped half to death for touching hands. Girls forced into marriages after being caught whispering secrets in the orchard. Priests' sons, barons' daughters, wandering minstrels, and silent farm hands. They all find their way to you because there's nowhere else to go. One night a woman arrives carrying a bundle wrapped in linen. At first you think it's food. but when she sets it down, it wriggles. It's a baby. A girl. You're stunned into silence. The mother won't speak her name. She just says, "They said she's cursed, that she'll grow into filth because of me." Her eyes are dry, hollow, beyond grief. She asks only one thing: will you raise her? Somewhere far, Sabine holds the child gently. The baby yawns, unaware of the world's cruelty. You nod. We'll keep her safe. The mother leaves without a goodbye. You name the baby Lise. She becomes something new in your world, a life untouched by guilt or fear. A reason to plan for more than just survival. You build her a cradle, a real one, carved from pine smoothed with beeswax. You hum lullabies when you rock her. You catch Sabine talking to her, telling stories about stars and ancient trees and all the people who came before her, who loved in secret and lived in defiance. Lise grows quickly, laughing even in her sleep. Her tiny hands grip your fingers like they never want to let go. She doesn't know your past. She doesn't know the word sodomite. She just knows warmth. And for the first time you begin to imagine what it might mean to stay. But Barthélemy draws closer. You hear of arrests in the neighboring town. 2 girls disappeared after a servant accused them of sharing a bed. A man was found hanged in the woods, whether by his own hand or not, no one knows. You feel the net tightening. One afternoon, a cloaked stranger appears in your garden. He speaks your name, not your alias, your real name. The one you haven't heard spoken aloud in 3 years. You freeze. Then he says, "I'm not here for you. I'm here because I was you." His name is John, and he was caught nearly a decade ago. Imprisoned for 6 months. Escaped with the help of a sympathetic jailer. Since then, he's been building a second network different from yours but parallel. You've lit fires, he says. I've been following the smoke. He tells you about others, dozens of them scattered across kingdoms. Some pretend to be priests. Others run inns or teach village children. All are secretly shepherds of the hunted. John proposes something new. Coordination. Not just safety, but rebellion. Quiet, organized, and growing. Sabine listens, arms crossed. Rebellion gets people killed, she says. John shrugs. So does silence. You sit by the hearth after he leaves Lise asleep in your lap. You think of the names you've gathered, the stories etched in memory, the pyres still burning. You remember Thomas, his silence, his warning. You remember Emmeric's warm hand on yours. You remember the feel of a noose brushing your neck in a dream you never wanted. And you remember that the world they burned you for still lives inside you. You turn to Sabine. Maybe it's time we stopped running. She looks at Lise, then back to you. I'll help, she says. But we do it smart. We do it slow. Over the next few weeks, you begin mapping again. Not just routes and safe houses, but people. Skills, positions, places of influence. You identify clergy who might be turned or already harbor doubts. You track which towns have inquisitors and which ones look the other way. John sends messengers. You receive letters in hollowed books and loaves of bread in coded embroidery. The network tightens. And then you get word Barthélemy is coming. Not to the town next over, to yours. He'll arrive in 5 days. You look at Lise asleep in her cradle. You feel the weight of 3 years in your bones. And then slowly you begin to prepare for war. War in your world doesn't look like soldiers clashing on open fields or banners fluttering above castle walls. It's quieter, closer, hidden inside glances and folded letters behind doors that creak at midnight, and candles that burn in back rooms long after curfew. The war you're preparing for isn't fought with swords. It's fought with secrets. 5 days. That's how long you have before Barthélemy arrives. 5 days to vanish what must be hidden. 5 days to bury what cannot be explained. 5 days to protect everyone who's trusted you enough to hand over their name. You begin with the cottage. Everything fragile or damning disappears, first bundles of coded herbs, parchment letters, tucked behind beams, embroidered maps stitched into cloaks. You dig holes by the river and fill them with oilskin-wrapped documents. You collapse a hidden compartment in the floor and scatter dirt over it. You wipe every surface Lise ever touched, every toy, every cloth marked with anything distinct. Sabine works beside you wordlessly. She burns every jar that once held her special blends. She moves her scrolls and distillations to a cabin 3 miles north, one built for emergencies known only to you and a few others. Even Lise understands. She watches you both with wide, unblinking eyes, as though sensing the shift in air, the tightness in your voices. You don't cry. Not yet. The second day, you summon the allies. Quietly. One by one. The baker who once smuggled a boy out beneath a wagon of flour. The weaver who speaks 3 languages and has been forging papers for years. The priest's niece who left the convent after a nun took her hand under the rose bushes and whispered, "Oh, God is not ashamed of us." You gather them in Sabine's root cellar, away from windows under lantern light, thick with the scent of wax and moss. You speak plainly. Barthélemy is coming. He has a list. I'm on it. Some of you may be too. No one leaves. The weaver nods and says, "Then we build thicker walls." The others murmur in agreement. Fear lingers, yes, but not paralysis. Not anymore. They know what's at stake. This war is for the right to exist. You assign tasks, routes of escape, roles to play. If questioned, the baker becomes forgetful. The weaver is deaf. The niece says she's been sick. You give each person a signal, something simple, something ordinary, an itch behind the ear, a dropped coin, a crooked candle. These signs will tell others when to run, when to hide, when to burn everything. The third day you prepare Lys. This is the hardest part. You've made arrangements. John will take her north where a widow with no children has promised to raise her like blood. She'll have a new name, a new story, a better chance. You pack a satchel, her favorite cloth rabbit, a carved spoon, a tuft of your hair wrapped in wool. That night you hold her by the fire. She dozes in your arms, warm and soft and completely unaware. Sabine crouches beside you, her voice rough. We could leave, all 3 of us, tonight. You nod slowly. You could, but you don't, because someone has to stay and light the torches. At dawn, John arrives. You don't say goodbye to Lys, not properly. You kiss her forehead, hand over the satchel, and turn before your heart can betray your mouth. Sabine watches John ride away with her tucked in his arms, and for the first time you see her cry. But she doesn't let it last long. "We keep moving," she says. The fourth day is quiet, too quiet. You walk through the town and feel the hush. People speak in low tones. Curtains twitch. Even the cows in the pasture seem to chew slower. Barthelemy's name is on everyone's tongue, but only in whispers. You see signs already. The tavern's been shuttered. The village boys no longer wrestle by the stream. And the priest has been seen polishing his chalice 3 times this week, a sure sign of nervousness. You station lookouts on the hills. Teenagers mostly. Smart ones who know how to disappear. They watch for riders, record movements, learn uniforms. At midday, a boy runs breathless to your door. They're here. Sabine doesn't flinch. You both dress in your plainest clothes. No embroidery, no jewelry, no scent. You walk into town like you belong there, like you're part of the dust and the wood smoke and the silence. Barthélemy is everything the rumors claimed, and worse. He's tall, pale, with sharp cheeks and colder eyes. He wears his faith like armor, polished, lethal, unwavering. Behind him march 2 guards in gray cloaks. His seal is a serpent coiled around a candle stamped in crimson wax. He surveys the town like a hunter entering a den. Not curious, not cautious, confident. He starts with the priest, then the baker, then the stable boy. Interviews, he says, for order, for truth. Each question, a knife in velvet. You don't wait for your turn. That night you gather the names on the list. Those still here. Those who can't run. And you begin the ritual. One by one you send them away. Some by cart, some on foot. Some through tunnels they've only ever practiced in theory. By midnight, only a few remain. You, Sabine the weaver, and an old man who once sheltered 3 fugitives in his barn and said I was a soldier once. I know when something's worth fighting for. You look at them, exhausted, hollow, brave. You say, we hold, we give them time. Sabine places a dagger under her belt. The weaver hides a flask of oil in her shawl. The old man takes his cane and nods. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe Barthélemy will call you in. Maybe he'll search your home and find nothing. Maybe he'll question your neighbors and grow tired and ride away. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll find the ashes too quickly buried, the scratches too neatly hidden, the sigh in someone's voice when they lie. You've done everything you can. And now you wait. The fire you once feared now burns inside you. Not for destruction, but for defense, for dignity, for every person who walked through your door carrying shame and left carrying hope. And if this is your final stand, then let it be that. A stand, not a retreat, not a sacrifice, but a blaze of resistance lit in the dark. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you sit beside Sabine by the fire, sharpening the same blade over and over, even though the edge is already keen. She's plucking rosemary from its stem, bundling it with trembling fingers. Not for medicine. Not this time. She'll burn it if she has to. Smoke masks truth, of that you're sure. The old man, Hallett is his name, you finally learn, snores softly in the chair by the door. He said he'd stay awake, but age catches even the most stubborn fighters. The weaver Mariette paces in the back room. She's been mumbling the names of the runaways you helped escape like a prayer or a spell. She's wearing 2 shawls now, as if fabric could armor her heart. You feel every second in your chest like a stone dropping through still water. The air is thick, the silence deafening. And outside, somewhere in the dark, Barthélemy waits. Or maybe he doesn't wait at all. Maybe he's already moving. Just before dawn, a knock. You freeze. 3 taps. A pause. 2 more. The signal. One of yours. You rush to the door and pull it open. It's Remy, one of the lookouts. They're heading to the blacksmith's, he whispers. 6 of them. Barthélemy, too. They're questioning him first. You nod, trying to think through the fog of adrenaline. The blacksmith's no friend to your cause, but he's also no snitch. Mostly because he knows nothing. Still, the direction matters. They're starting close, moving outward. Which means you have time. Hours, maybe. Sabine and Mariette spring into motion without a word. Every bottle, every scroll, every scrap of damning evidence gone. You wrap them in a tarp and slip them beneath Hallett's chair where the floorboards are loose. Sabine douses the hearth. Mariette unhooks the false wall panel behind the shelves and starts packing tools into sacks. You wipe the table clean, then reset it with bread cheese and a Bible cracked open to the Psalms. Let them think you're simple. Let them see what they expect. The next 2 hours drag like rusted chains. You sit, you eat, you pretend. Then boots, outside the cottage. Not a knock this time. A pound. Sabine answers. Barthélemy steps inside like he owns the air. He's flanked by 2 guards, one with a ledger, the other with an iron rod. They don't introduce themselves. They never do. Barthélemy's eyes land on you, then drift to the others. He doesn't speak for a full minute. He just watches. Finally, he says, "You're the healer." Sabine nods. He gestures to Hallett, who's now sitting upright, face blank. "And him, my father," she lies. "And the others, neighbors," she replies calmly. "The weaver's husband died last winter. The baker's been sick. They come to me for tinctures." He cocks his head. Convenient. He walks slowly around the table, trailing his fingers along the edge. Then he stops behind you. You can feel him breathing. "You've been in this town 3 years," he says. "Yes." "No family, no marriage." You shake your head. "You're not too old. Why not marry?" His tone is casual, but every word is a weight. "I had a love once," you say. "They died of fever." He waits for you to slip, to gender the lie. But you don't. He leans in closer, and before that you don't flinch. "I was a boy. I had chores." He stares a moment longer, then straightens. The guard with the ledger scribbles something. Barthélemy circles again, finally settling near Sabine's shelf. He picks up a bottle, uncorks it, sniffs. Lavender. He sets it down. Then another. Mint. And another. This one Sabine looks. Vinegar and elder. Useful for cleaning wounds. He puts it down, then walks to Lisa's cradle. empty now, covered in dust. He trails his finger across the wood, then examines the dust on his glove. Child Sabine hesitates. You jump in. She died in spring, plague fever. He turns to you, his eyes narrow, unfortunate. Then silence, too long, too tense. He nods to his guards. They begin searching the cottage, pulling blankets, opening crates, tapping the walls. But they don't find the compartment beneath Halet's chair. They don't lift the shelf where Mariette hid the salves. They don't question the dried rosemary hanging by the door. They see only what you want them to see. Barthélemy lingers by the hearth. You've heard the stories, he says suddenly, of what we're finding in towns like this. What's being rooted out? No one replies. He steps closer. You know what sodomy does to a community. Still silence. It hollows it, rots it. It poisons children, corrupts women, destroys men. It turns faith into mockery and love into perversion. I've seen it. I've burned it out, and I'll keep burning. His voice is calm, controlled, like a sermon sharpened into a blade. You meet his eyes. What does hate do, you ask? He smiles faintly. Hate cleanses. Then he turns and walks out. Just like that. Gone. But the danger doesn't leave with him. You sit in silence for an hour after they go. No one breathes too loudly. No one moves too fast. Eventually, Halet exhales. A long rattling sound. Bastard, he mutters. Sabine laughs a single sharp breath. Mariette cries. You just sit. You've survived the first blow. But Barthélemy isn't done. You know it. He'll watch. Wait. Lure. He'll expect someone to slip. And when they do, he'll burn the whole town. So you begin again. More precautions. More codes. More routes. You send messages to John. You alert the northern cell. You mark out the safest roads and prepare 5 new identities just in case. And then you do something you haven't done in months. You write. Not a message. A story. Your story. From the beginning. You write it plainly, clearly, carefully. You write for the ones on... You write for the ones who are still too scared. You write for Thomas, for Emmerich, for Lise, for yourself. You seal it in wax, wrap it in oilcloth, and bury it behind the cottage beneath a flat stone marked with a single scratch. If they come for you tomorrow, let them. They will not. Warning arrives, slow and gray. The sky hangs low, the air so still it feels like the earth is holding its breath. You wake before the sun, though you barely slept. None of you did. The fire in the hearth has long since died, and the coals look like the memory of heat, faint ashen, too soft to warm anything now. But you still sit close, boots laced, cloak, ready eyes fixed on the door. Barthélemy is expected to begin his second round of interviews today. He's taken over the priest's home as his base, a grim irony considering what the church has always done to people like you. But then again, irony is a luxury few can afford out here. You go to the market at dawn. Sabine's already there when you arrive, fussing over turnips with more vigor than anyone could believe was real. It's performance, of course. All of it is. You pick up carrots, comment on the weather, pretend not to notice Barthélemy's gray-cloaked assistants observing everything from the well. The baker gives you half a loaf without a word. You nod. That's the signal. One of the families made it safely across the border. Good. The weaver walks past you, muttering about dyed thread, but she drops a scrap of cloth into your palm as she does. A black thread weaves through the red. Another signal. The route along the river is still clear. You return home before midday. The town feels like it's been turned inside out, familiar but foreign. Every alley a trap. Every sound a question. Even the birds have gone quiet. Then you hear it hooves. Not many. Just 2 horses. Coming slowly up the road. You step outside. Barthélemy dismounts with a grace that's too careful to be anything but trained. He's not armored, not armed beyond a ceremonial dagger. But he doesn't need weapons. His presence is the weapon. He greets you politely. You are the healer's assistant. You nod. Your heart is doing things you can't control. But your face is calm. He glances at your cottage. We'll talk inside. You lead him in. Sabine's not here. She left at dawn to tend to a woman giving birth 2 villages away. Not a lie, but also not the full truth. Barthélemy sits. Doesn't ask. Just takes the chair like it belongs to him. I've heard your name, he says, folding his hands. You say nothing. I've heard many names, he adds, eyes searching yours. Some true, some less so. Still, you wait. You've practiced for this. He continues, you've traveled. You've lived in places where alternative customs are more tolerated. That is rare in these parts. He's baiting you. You offer a weak smile. I travel to heal. Illness doesn't ask what customs you keep. He leans back. You know, he says, many men and women have inclinations. Most resist them. They suffer, of course, but their souls remain pure. It's only when one acts upon such unnatural desires that true corruption sets in. You stare at him. He's trying to draw it out. Make you admit something. Confess. Crumble. You shrug, careful. I've seen many illnesses, none more unnatural than a man so eager to dissect another's private grief. It's subtle, but he notices. His lips twitch. I like you, he says. You say nothing. He rises, eyes drifting to the books on your shelf, the herbs drying by the window. You've staged everything carefully. Nothing suspicious. No coded tinctures. No telltale symbols. Just what a quiet healer's apprentice might keep. He walks to the hearth. Taps the stones. May I, he asks, gesturing toward your storage pots. You nod. He lifts lids, finds dried mushrooms, salt, nothing more. When he reaches the final jar, one you deliberately filled with vinegar and clove, he winces and puts it back. You didn't hide the important things here. He surveys the room once more. Then he speaks softly. Your neighbors like you. They say you're kind, useful, quiet. You nod again. But kindness, he says, can be a mask, a very convincing one. He turns to leave. Thank you for the tea, he says, even though you never offered any. As his foot crosses the threshold, he pauses. Tell the healer I may return tomorrow. There's a boy in the mill with a festering wound. Then he's gone. You close the door slowly, and only once it clicks shut do your knees give out. You fall to the floor, gasping, head between your arms. That was too close. You don't know if he believed you. You don't know if he'll be back with more men. You only know you bought time. That night, Sabine returns exhausted and blood-smeared from the birth. You tell her everything. She nods silently, sets down her basket, and lights every candle in the house. Not out of fear, out of warning. Candles in the window, candles near the garden. A signal to the others the fox is sniffing the coop. The days that follow are slower. Barthélemy lingers in the village, asking questions, always polite, always smiling. He praises the devout, speaks against temptation, preaches at Mass with a voice so smooth you almost forget the gallows in his eyes. Then the arrests begin. Not here, not yet, but nearby. A boy in a wine cellar found with another. 2 women in a barn dragged from the hay by a local snitch. Barthélemy isn't just hunting. He's feeding the flames. You get a letter, another one from John. One word, now, you know what it means. The time for careful signals and half measures is ending. You gather the final names. You mark the safest paths. You scatter the last of the decoys. And then you do something you've never done before. You write a letter. Not to John, not to Sabine, not to the girl in the convent, or the boy with the bruised voice. To Barthélemy. No names. No threats. Just one sentence. You cannot erase what you refuse to understand. You leave it in his saddlebag, and you know he'll read it. You don't wait for his reply. Instead, you walk into the woods where 3 frightened youths wait in cloaks and borrowed boots. They look to you, all of them, not because you're the oldest, but because you're the one who has survived. You point east toward a place none of them have ever seen. And then once more you begin to walk. You walk for hours before anyone speaks. The forest muffles your footsteps, your fears, even your thoughts. The younger of the 3, a girl named Corinne, keeps glancing over her shoulder, like she expects the trees themselves to start shouting. The boy beside her, Mathieu, walks hunched, arms wrapped around himself despite the warmth. The third, a red-haired baker's apprentice named Saul, just stares at the back of your head, waiting for direction. You lead them deeper away from the main roads. The path narrows to a deer trail, the air rich with pine and damp leaves. You taught them already how to listen, how to step lightly, how to scatter false trails. Still, their breath is loud. They're not ready. Not yet. But they trust you. That's enough for now. You make camp beside a stream by dusk. Not a fire. Just cold bread, cold water, and cloaks pulled tight against the coming dark. You're careful with every sound, every footprint. You know that if Barthélemy truly wants to track you, he'll do more than ask questions. He'll hire men who've spent years chasing wolves and witches. So you move like prey that knows how to bite. When Corinne finally speaks, it's with a tremor in her voice. Do they really burn people? The question hits harder than she knows. You nod, slowly. I saw them light the wood myself, you say. I heard the crowd cheer. She pulls her knees to her chest. Why you pause? You look at the stars overhead, blinking faintly through the canopy. For a long moment you consider lying. But she deserves truth. Because fire is easy. It scares people into silence. It leaves no body behind. She swallows hard. Would you rather they hang us? Mathieu asks bitter. You shake your head. I'd rather they leave us alone. That answer, simple and impossible, lingers long into the night. None of you sleep. By morning, the frost is gone, replaced by dew and golden light. Saul finds wild berries. You ration the bread. The journey ahead is long, more than a week by foot, if all goes well. You're heading to a port town near the cliffs, one you've only heard about from Jun. He said there's a ship that leaves every few months bound for an island where the church holds little sway, and the locals care more about fishing than who someone shares a bed with. It might be a myth, but it's the best you've got. The road winds through valleys, past the ruins of old stone towers and charred villages long forgotten by the maps. Each step carries a risk. Each new face you pass could mean betrayal. But you've learned how to spot danger. You avoid inns, choosing barns and root cellars. You don't light fires unless you've tested the wind and confirmed no travelers have passed for hours. You sleep in shifts. You keep your stories straight, and you teach. You teach Corinne how to read the moss on trees, how to mimic a wounded bird to signal for help. You teach Mathieu how to sharpen a stick into a blade, and how to keep wounds from festering. You teach Saul how to listen to the wind, the birds, the silence between sounds. They're quick learners. They have to be. One afternoon near a small village too quiet for comfort, you pass a road shrine, a crude wooden cross draped with dried flowers. Someone has scratched a word into the post. Inverted. You freeze. It's a warning. In Barthelemy circles, inverted is the favored word for people like you. They say your soul is turned backward, your desires bent against nature. You move faster. That night you double the watch. You dream of Thomas again. But not like before. This time he's older, wearing the cloak of a traveler, watching you from across a square. He doesn't speak, doesn't move. Just watches eyes full of something that could be guilt or hope. You wake with your jaw clenched and your hands curled into fists. You shake it off. You keep walking. On the 5th day, you reach the outskirts of the port town. You smell salt in the air before you see water. The noise is different here, louder, rougher, full of fishwives shouting and gulls crying, and the creak of ships rocking in the harbor. You slip through the market like ghosts. John's instructions were clear. A tanner named Eudeline runs the safe house. You find her behind a curtain of drying hides bent over a vat of dye. She looks up, scans your group, and nods once. No talking, she says, gesturing to the back. They're watching. You follow her through the cramped shop, past barrels of ash and lye, into a cellar that smells of leather and old stories. It's not much, just pallets on the floor, a water jug, some stale biscuits. But it's safe. For now. Eudeline explains that the ship won't come for 2 more days. It's delayed by weather. Maybe more. She doesn't know. You thank her. Then you rest. Finally. That night, you sit alone beneath a crack in the ceiling where a sliver of moonlight cuts the dark. You think of Sabine, of Lys, of John out there somewhere moving like you, hiding like you. You wonder if Barthélemy found your note. You wonder if it mattered. And then you wonder what happens after the boat. Will this life, this constant running ever stop? Can you build a future out of ashes and whispers? You don't have answers. But when Corinne curls beside you, murmuring in her sleep, and Mathieu places a careful hand on Saul's shoulder to comfort him after a nightmare, you realize something. Maybe it's not about the end. Maybe it's about the people you bring with you along the way. The ones who survive because you refuse to stay quiet. The ones who might one day dare to speak loudly. You close your eyes. You rest. Tomorrow the sea. You wake before the others. The cellar is quiet dark except for the thin strand of morning light slicing through the crack above the door. You rise without sound, stretch limbs that ache from too many days on the road, and step lightly past the pallets where Corinne and Mathieu sleep in a tangle of cloaks. Saul is already awake, crouched near the corner, sharpening a piece of wood into a needle-thin steak. He nods at you. You nod back. Outside, the port town is louder than it was the day before. You hear the clatter of crates being unloaded, the bark of sea dogs calling for coin, the slap of ropes against damp wooden hulls. Gulls wheel above their cries, cutting through the thick, briny air. You catch whiffs of fish, tar, sweat, and salt. No one looks at you twice. That's good. You've worked hard to be forgettable. Eudeline finds you near the water's edge, her thick hands stained blue from dye, her expression unreadable. The ship's here, she says simply. Your chest tightens. She explains it's a cargo boat bound for the coast of Normandy, 2 days' journey over rough waters. Not luxurious, not legal, but the captain owes her a favor from long ago, before she was a tanner, before she had scars on her arms, and a house that smelled like vinegar and leather. You don't ask what the favor was. You just nod. She looks you over. You'll have to choose, she says. It takes a moment to understand. There's room for 3, not 4. You exhale slowly. The words hit hard, but not like a surprise. You've always known that safety comes in fragments, not promises. The church can take everything, even choices, especially choices. You return to the cellar, heart-pounding, mind already calculating. You can't ask Corinne to stay. She's too soft still flinches at her own shadow, still sees fire behind every doorway. Mathieu. He's got fight in him, yes, but he's loyal to a fault. He'll shield others before himself, and that gets people killed. Saul is harder to read. He's steady, observant, quiet rage simmering beneath calm waters. You think he might survive no matter what, but you also think he might never stop running. You tell them the truth. Only 3 can go. They don't shout. They don't cry. They've learned too much in too little time. Saul is the first to speak. I'll stay. Corinne shakes her head instantly. No, I will. No one's staying. Mathieu says, stepping forward. We draw lots. You stop him. No. Your voice is calm. Final. I'll stay. They protest, of course. They say it's madness, that you've done enough, that it's your turn to escape. But you shake your head. I've had my escape, you say. More than once, it's yours now. You kneel before Corinne. Protect your softness, you whisper. The world will try to tear it from you. To Mathieu, use your fire, but never let it blind you. To Saul, remember, the fight isn't over once the boat sails. It's just moved. They hug you, even Saul. Eudeline arrives later, silent and firm, motioning for them to follow. You watch them walk toward the docks, cloaks flapping like broken wings, heads low but hearts high. They disappear into the crowd, swallowed by the shouts and salt and ropes. You see the ship, small, battered, sturdy, pull away from the dock an hour later. You stay on the hill until it's a speck on the horizon. Then you return to the cellar alone. For a while you do nothing. Just sit in the quiet, tracing grooves into the dirt floor, with your boot listening to the echo of waves beyond the walls. You don't cry. There's no time. There's work. By dusk, you've changed your clothes, simple tunic, patched trousers, a cap pulled low. Eudeline gives you a loaf of bread and directions to a nearby monastery. Not one of those, she says, smirking. They grow herbs, don't ask questions, and they owe me more than one debt. You shoulder your pack. But before you go, you ask her a question. Why do you help? She stares at you for a moment, then shrugs. Because no one helped me. It's always the same answer, isn't it? You walk through the town like a ghost, weaving through fishermen and old women and merchants hawking dried herring. No one notices you. You're good at being invisible now. It's a skill and a scar. The monastery sits on a hill overlooking the water, its stone walls pocked with moss and age. You knock twice, then once more a rhythm passed down through the network. A monk opens the door. He says nothing, just steps aside. Inside it's quiet, clean. The scent of rosemary and smoke fills the halls. You sleep that night on a straw mat beneath a stained glass window of the crucifixion. You dream not of fire or Tomas or rope, but of Saul planting seeds in foreign soil of Corinne, singing on a rocky cliff of Mathieu, teaching children how to sharpen sticks and trust each other. You dream of something you've never dared imagine before, a world where people like you grow old. In the morning, the monk shows you to the garden. You know herbs, he asks. You nod. You know survival. You know how to turn poison into medicine. And now maybe you'll learn how to earn memory into sanctuary. The days pass slowly. The sea wind is harsh, but it smells of freedom. One afternoon, a boy appears at the gate, thin, tired, lost. He says your name, not the old one, not the new one, just yours. You step forward, and the cycle begins again. Another lost soul, another light to guard. Because you've made your choice not just to flee the fire, but to become the lamp. Not to escape the past, but to build the bridge others need. And as long as your feet touch earth and your lungs hold air, you'll keep doing it. Until the world no longer needs you to. The monastery becomes a rhythm. Not a refuge exactly, but a pause. A quiet breath between storms. You wake with the bell break bread, with the brothers tend the herb beds. Listen to bees as they pass like tiny monks from flower to flower. No one asks where you came from. No one demands your history. Perhaps they know. Perhaps they simply don't care. You sleep in a room with 3 other novices. Young men with downcast eyes and blistered hands. They pray at night. You listen. You fold your hands. You mouth the words. Sometimes you even mean them. There's peace in repetition, the same psalms, the same soil, the same silence. But you are not made for silence. It starts with a note, pressed into your work robe tucked where no one but you would look. Just 2 lines written in a narrow hand, John says it's time. The mountain house is lit. You burn it in the herb oven that evening, pretending it's spoiled time. You leave before sunrise, taking only what you brought your hands, your name, and the fire that never went out. The mountain house is a code word. You know it well. It means the council has gathered. Not a formal council, not yet, but the closest thing your world has to one. It's held in a crumbling hunting lodge deep in the northern forests, abandoned for decades, hidden behind tangled underbrush and a collapsed outer wall. Only those who've survived the worst know how to find it. You arrive after 4 days of hard travel blisters on your feet, heart hammering with every rustle of leaves. And when you see it smoke, curling from the stone chimney, a red cloth tied to the pine outside, you exhale the breath you didn't realize you'd held for weeks. Inside are faces you recognize, and ones you don't. John is there, of course, older than before, hair threaded with gray, but eyes sharp. He hugs you with a tightness that says he wasn't sure you'd come back. There's Nadia, the former nun, who smuggled more than 60 fugitives out of the Holy Land during the Crusades. Felix, the boy with the stutter, who now maps safe houses with such detail it makes you ache. Even Eudalon is there, smelling of smoke and stubbornness. You sit in a circle that night and share bread and stories. Not all of them painful. You laugh. Real laughter, the kind that bubbles up without shame. It feels like something between sacrilege and salvation. Then John clears his throat. It's time, he says. We've survived long enough. Now we plan. You go still. He unrolls a map. Not of escape routes, not of danger zones, but of outposts. Places where people like you are already living quietly, cautiously, often unknowingly close to others like themselves. Villages where the priests drink too much to notice. Towns where the mayor's son turns a blind eye. Riverlands where the laws are softer or simply ignored. The idea is simple: connect them. Create a world beneath the world. A chain of care, of memory, of resistance. It won't be safe, but it will be real. You speak next. About Corinne, Mathieu, Sol. About the monastery. About Barthélemy. When you say his name, the room stills. He's gathering force, you say. Quietly, systematically. He wants a purge. Nadia nods. He's not the only one. You look at the others. Then we make it harder for them to succeed. What follows is 3 days of planning. You break into pairs, sketch new symbols, record hiding places. You establish false identities, write letters, invent lies so detailed they could pass for truth. You craft the future. On the 4th day, a girl arrives. 12, pale, barefoot. She's walked for 3 days, following a trail of markings carved into fence posts and trees. She doesn't speak, but in her hand she holds a scrap of cloth, the same pattern as the quilt you left with Corinne. Your voice catches. John steps forward and kneels. You made it, he says softly. She nods. The fire crackles. And in that moment, you know the truth, the path you chose, the one lined with pain and loss and fire has led to this, to her, to others, to a world that may never love you back the way you love it, but a world that can change because of you. You reach into your pouch, pull out the tiny wooden rabbit you carved for Lise, and press it into the girl's palm. Welcome home, you whisper, because you've built one, not with bricks, but with every life you helped save, every hand you held steady, every name you refused to forget. This war is not won, but it has begun to shape something else, something they'll never see coming. You stay in the mountain house for 7 days, 7 days of planning building, imagining a world most people would call impossible. A world where those branded as deviant could live without fear, where love wasn't evidence and silence wasn't survival. You know you might not live to see it, but you also know deep in your bones that it's already begun. On the 8th morning, the group disperses. They leave in pairs or alone, each carrying names, maps, tools, whispers. You give Nadia a sealed letter for Sabine, and she gives you a pouch of wax tablets marked with safe house coordinates from the east. Felix offers you a pair of leather gloves he stitched himself, light, thin, perfect for cold nights and silent work. You press them to your chest in thanks. The last to leave is the girl who arrived barefoot. Her name is Elin. You don't know her full story, yet she hasn't spoken, but you've watched her move. The caution in her steps, the way her eyes flick to every door. She's been hunted. You offer to walk with her to the next station. She nods silent. The forest is still waking as you travel. Dew glistens on leaves, spiderwebs shimmer like spun glass, and birdsong trickles through the air like prayer. Elin doesn't say much, but she stays close. Close enough to trust you, close enough to be trusted. By midday, you reach a crumbling stone arch that marks the path to a dry cave. Inside are supplies, blankets, dried meat, a flask of water. It's enough. This will be her stop for now. Someone will collect her tomorrow. Before you leave, she reaches into her satchel and pulls out a small wooden token, a circle etched with 2 interlocking hands. She presses it into your palm. You look down, startled. The symbol is old. One of the first you ever saw, scrawled into the beams of a church stable where 2 boys once hid. You glance back up and she meets your eyes. Finally, she speaks. My sister made it. She died. A pause. They said it was fever, but it wasn't. Your throat closes. You nod, hand closing over the token. She lives, you whisper. It's not a lie. Not entirely. You leave her in the cave blanket tucked under her chin, the token in your pocket. Your thoughts too loud for comfort. The trail bends east now, toward another town, another mission. You've been asked to find a pair of shepherds who vanished after the local priest gave a fiery sermon about the disease of Sodom. You know how this plays out. You also know how to interrupt it. The town is quiet when you arrive, too quiet. No children shouting, no carts rattling, no idle gossip at wells. You pass a shuttered chapel with soot stains around the frame. A warning, or a memory. You find the shepherds hiding in the woods. One has a broken ankle, the other won't stop trembling. You bring them food wrap, the ankle help them move one painful step at a time. When you finally reach a safe house 3 towns over, you collapse beside them in the hay, drained but whole. The woman who runs this house, a widowed brewer named Odile, gives you soup and silence. You appreciate both. She tells you Barthélemy passed through here 2 weeks ago. Sharp-tongued man, she says. Smiles when he talks about burning people. She leans close. But he's not the only one hunting. You know that already. There are others, each with different faces. Some quote scripture, some quote kings, all with the same goal erasure. You think about that as you mend your boots that night. Erasure. How many names have already disappeared? How many hands were never held? How many songs never sung? You won't be one of them. None of you will. You take out the wooden token Elin gave you and trace the hands with your thumb. The symbol is simple, ancient, but its message is clear. Connection, protection, presence. You carve it into the underside of a bench before you leave, hidden but waiting.